Hey everyone, how's it going? Forrest here, again with another installment of my complete analysis of all of Bach's chorale harmonizations. Today we're looking at a relatively short chorale. We have Nicht, traurig, Nicht, sehr, which translates to not so sad, not so much. Fairly straightforward chorale. One interesting progression going on here in the first system, but other than that, very straightforward. Let's hop into the analysis. So we have 3 flats in the key signature. We start on C minor, we end on C minor. Also another interesting tidbit is the fact that we're in a minor key and we end on a minor chord. Not super interesting, but definitely has a little bit of a unique sort of a profile to the end of the chorale, because as you've watched, if you've watched any of my previous videos, you probably already know that most of Bach's minor key chorales end with a major chord, but it's not a tremendous deal. But I reckon the overall tonality of this chorale is C minor. We then move to B diminished over D, D, B natural, F, and D. That's 7/6, and typically we would expect some type of one chord in first inversion after this: E flat, C, E flat, and G. Really interesting leap here in the melody, but this progression right here is very typical of Bach. We're actually going to see a variation on this pattern later in the phrase. And then we have a passing tone here in the alto. We then have our tonic triad again in root position, so we'll just change the figured bass: C, C, G, and F. This F kind of like a 4/3 suspension or an accented non-chord tone. It's really this E flat, that's the third of the chord. Then that takes us to F minor, F, C, A flat, and D. Apologies, not F minor. D minor 7 flat 5 over F 2 6 5. And then we have an interesting progression here, which I originally said was a variation on this progression that we have at the beginning, and I will stand by that because 2/6 is sort of like a 4 chord in that regard, but apologies for misspeaking there. We have G, B natural, G, and E flat. This is an E flat augmented triad in first inversion, so that's a 3+6. And then with 4 voices moving off of the harmonic rhythm, we definitely have a chord progression happening in passing here, a subdivided chord progression that takes us to F minor in first inversion, A flat, C, F, and F. So 4/6 happening off of the harmonic rhythm here, which leads us to not just a half cadence, but a Phrygian half cadence with this 4/6 chord going to 5, G, D, G, and B natural, G major, root position. Now what I meant by a variation on this progression is that for all intents and purposes really this chord is sort of operating like an F minor chord. We have the makings of it in the lower voices, just the melody as a D chord here. So when we have the pattern of one chord, not a one chord exactly, but when we have a chord and 2 beats from the chord, however the harmonic rhythm in this instance might be, sometimes it's subdivided, sometimes it's over just the regular rhythm of the melody. We have 1 and 1/6 separated by 7/6, which is a diatonic step below. Here we basically have a 4 chord going to 3/6, going to 4/6. So that's what I meant by the variation. To be like a very straightforward variation, this would have to be a 4 chord in root position, but 2, 6, and 4 are very similar to one another, even more similar because of the fact that this is a 2/7 chord rather than just a 2 chord, because 2/7 has the C in the chord as well, which basically fully spells out the minor triad, the 4 chord that is. But yeah, slight variation on this progression here, but it ends up just working out to be adjacent harmony 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or even more extremely 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But it really feels like the adjacent harmony, that is chords that are next to each other in the scale, starts from 1. Next phrase is going to take us to the key of E flat, ends in an imperfect authentic cadence. We start with E flat, C, G, and C. It's 1/6, resolving our half cadence, passing tones in the outer voices, and then we get our root position C minor triad, C, C, G, and E flat. No need to reiterate the Roman numeral. We then have F, C, F, and A flat, which is potentially an F minor chord, but I actually think that this C here is an accented non-chord tone, and it's really this D right here that is our root. So I think that this is in the key of C minor 2-6, and in the key of E flat major, it's also our leading tone chord. We sometimes see 2 being flipped for 7 within the key, because 2 and 7 are a third apart, and chords that are a third apart share 2 tones in common, which means that if you take one of the voices and move it by step, you'll change the chord from 2 to 7 or vice versa. And in another sense, we have 2 and 7 being compared here, where 2 is what we are analyzing in it in the key of C minor, and we have 7 as its analysis in the key of E flat, and it resolves the way we would expect to a tonic triad: E flat major, G, E flat, B flat, and G, 1-6. Passing tone in the bass here, we then have B flat, E flat, B flat, and F. This E flat I think is a 4-3 suspension over the bass, so I think what we're really seeing here is a B flat major chord, which takes us to B flat, D, F, and B flat, which is the resolution to our suspension from the previous beat. No need to reanalyze anything there. And then we cadence on E flat major, E flat, B flat, E flat, and G. Tonic triad root position. Next phrase takes us to the key of B flat major. We get another imperfect authentic cadence here, but we start off in the key of E flat, and we pretty much modulate right off the bat here. We have E flat, B flat, E flat, and G, which is our tonic triad and root position again. I reiterate the Roman numeral when I see a system break. Like here, for example, I don't reiterate the Roman numeral, I just change the figured bass. Or like here, I only write 1 5 chord. However, if there was a system break after this, I would rewrite 5 on the new line. It feels kind of weird leaving a blank spot in the first space on a new system, so I add the Roman numeral there for consistency's sake. But after our 1 chord, we go to the same chord in first inversion. We have G, B flat, E flat, and B flat. So we'll go ahead and just change the figured bass. No need to reiterate the Roman numeral. And we can say that we modulate here, and now E flat is our subdominant. We then go to F major, F, C, F, and A natural, which is our 5 chord, passing 7th in the bass, and then we get D, B flat, F, and B flat, which is our tonic triad in first inversion. We then have C, B flat, G, and E flat, which is C minor 7. That's a 2-7 chord in root position. Then we go to F major again, F, A natural, F, and D. I think that this isn't D minor, this is F major, just by virtue of the fact that we've seen this sort of accented non-chord tone in the past, in the first phrase. I don't think we're literally borrowing it from it. It's difficult to say if this is a literal recycling of that material, but we've seen this accented non-chord tone as part of like a passing, it's actually part of a neighbor tone figure here, but part of the chord then going to another chord. So it's not happening at the same point metrically, but we've seen the gesture before. Regardless, this is a 5 chord, F major. That's going to take us to B flat major, B flat, F, and D. Tonic triad, root position. Last phrase takes us back to the key of C minor, ends in a perfect authentic cadence, and we modulate pretty early on into the phrase as well. We start off with another B flat chord, B flat, F, and D, no need to reanalyze, and then we go to F7 over A, which is, or over A flat, which, yeah, actually, the fact that this is A flat means that we're probably modulating over this B flat chord. And if that's the case in the key of C minor, this is our 7 chord. I expected this to be an A natural, and in fact I'm going to check the, yeah, it is A flat, not A natural. So with that being said, I think we have A, C, F, and E flat, so we have some transitive harmony here of 4, 6, 5. So maybe this is a direct modulation, maybe this is a common chord modulation. We do see the subtonic 7th get used as a chord to modulate to the minor key with some frequency. So it's the only thing that's interesting about this progression is the fact that we're going from 7 to 4. Typically it's the other way around. It's one of the lesser common transitive harmonies we see in Bach. 6 going to 3 is pretty common. 5 going to 2 actually is pretty common as well, but 7 going to 4 is pretty uncommon. This F is a chord tone, so we don't need to mark it. That takes us to G major, G, D, G, and B natural, which is 5, passing 7th in the bass, and then we get E flat, C, G, and G, which is our tonic triad and first inversion with the passing tone in the bass again. And as we're closing in on our final cadence, we have G, C, G, and E flat. Looks kind of like a suspension here, but it's actually 1, 6, 4, C minor over G, which we would then expect to go to G. It's either G or G7, and in this case we are going to G7 with a 4-3 suspension over the bass. Very common to see 4-3 suspensions over dominant chords in root position. But yeah, we get 5-7 here, G, B natural, F, and D, with these little anticipations happening in the upper voices here. You can also put a bracket to show the relationship between the cadential 6-4 and the 5 chord. That's just how I learned how to do it. It doesn't really add any significance to the analysis, but it's just habit at this point. And then we resolve to C minor, C, G, E flat, and C. Tonic triad, root position. Again, it's kind of interesting to see this chord as a minor form rather than a major form. Typically Bach's minor chorales end with a major chord, but not always, as we can see here. It's a bit of a toss-up. I'd say the vast majority of Bach's minor chorales end with a Picardy third in the final tonic sonority. But yeah, other than this adjacent harmony here with the augmented triad, I really don't think there's too much to write home about in this chorale. We do have some interesting transitive harmony going on here, but other than that, fairly straightforward chorale with not too much going on the page. But with that, I think I'm going to cap the video off. If you're interested in following me along on the journey to analyze all of Bach's chorale harmonizations, feel free to subscribe to the channel. You can hit the notification icon and like the video as well if you enjoyed the content. Thank you so much for watching the video and supporting the channel by doing so. I look forward to tomorrow's analysis, and I hope you take care.